this dungeon and you turn a corner and you see this giant red dragon. What do? In this episode of Play It Forward, we're gonna be learning how to take your turn by attacking, spellcasting, dodging, and just stuff like that. So stay tuned. So welcome back to Play It Forward, and one of the most complicated things, to me at least, was learning how to take a turn. So I want to go ahead, I want to teach you how to, and I want to kind of show what's in a turn so that like you can survive that big red dragon if it comes along. One of the most important things to remember about a turn is there is a movement, and then there's action. And your movement is just your, it will say on your character sheet how much you get to move, but normally it would be about 30 feet. But depending on the race and all that, it could be more. So one of these grids, each tile would be 5 feet. So you could use 3D printed stuff, anything like that. But this is the normal tiles. This is a lot of what people use. They don't want to get too complicated into it. But let's go ahead and get right into it. So the attack is one of the most common things people do. I do it a lot. And you just use like a bow, short swords, long swords, great swords, anything like that. And you get to go ahead, you attack with them, and that would be your action. Other things you could do is you can cast a spell, but it's kind of weird because the spells, they will say if it takes an action or not, and like how long it will take. So those are kind of weird when taking your turn. Another thing that you could do is use an object. So that would be like using a healing potion if you're low. Maybe there's like a ring or something that's magical that you want to use or something like that. And that would help you with that. But another really weird thing is bonus actions. And in a turn, sometimes you'll get a bonus action depending on the situation and the scenario. And like there are certain races that will let you have a bonus action once you get into a higher level or something like that. So another thing you could do is you could search. So you could go ahead, like maybe there's like a big library and you want to see if there's anything weird about this library or something like that.
Look for a trapdoor or something like that.
So another thing that you can do is you can hide, and that would be like a dexterity/stealth check, and that would essentially get you out of the fight and would try to get you secluded and hidden away so nobody would notice you until you really want to be noticed. Another thing you could do is dash, and this is an action, and it basically lets you move an extra 30 feet. So if you, like, let's say there's an explosion, and the DM says this is going to go off in, like, 1 round of turns. So you're going to have to try to get as far away from that as you can in the amount of time that you have. So you're probably going to want to use a dash on top of your movement. So that's something you could do. And disengaging, that would also take an action, because you can get a attack of opportunity. If you try to just move away from an enemy, the enemy would get an attack on you. But if you disengage, then you'd be able to leave the enemy without them getting an attack opportunity on you. And then you'd be able to move your 30 feet. And then you can also help. This is one of the most common things that people will do. And that would just be going, and it basically gives whoever you help. So let's say there's 3 characters. One of them is like Jax, Alice, and someone else. So you go ahead, you help Alice. That would basically give Alice the next time, like if she's being attacked, she would get a advantage on that. So she'd roll 2 dice and take the higher one. Like while attacking, just anything like that. So that really helps somebody. And that's a lot of what you can do in your turn.
So you said a tile is how many feet again?
A tile would be 5 feet, so most likely you'd be able to move 6 tiles.
So I wanted to clarify something. So you don't mean like this is a full tile. You mean each one of these squares?
No, yeah, each one of those grid squares would be 5 feet.
I just want to make sure people aren't confused by what you meant by tile.
So a turn, it's actually pretty short when you really think about it, because all these you can do, but it's not like you have to do literally every single one of these. You just choose one of the actions.
What do you think is
when
right
you're
for that
moving.
scenario?
Yeah.
Okay. Like a dragon, we may want to run because we may be level 1 and not really equipped for.
Or you might like want to take make a spell, and most likely, depending on the spell, like let's say you want to do a fireball, that would be an action because that's such a big spell that it would take your action, but you'd still be able to have your movement.
Okay.
So like let's say you come across that dragon, you can go ahead, you can back up as your movement, and then you can cast that spell as your action. But turns aren't actually that complicated when you really think about it. It's a lot simpler, and some of these like are actually really easy. Using an object and stuff like that, really simple. Searching is really simple, and just stuff like that.
So before we continue, I had a question for you, Jake.
Okay.
So we have this tile out, and this is quite useful for some of the things that we're talking about because it helps you determine how far the enemy is from you, but also like navigate with your fellow adventurers, right? In terms of like how you're setting up your attack and all that.
Mhm.
Like how would that normally showcase on the tiles? I know we don't have any figures with us right now. but-
So you mean like people attacking like monsters? So it would be like you'd have your minis, and it kind of helps with movement and all that. Because if you were just playing on like a table, you're not going to be able to know where this is or where that is. Like if there was a monster away from you, you don't know if that's 30 feet or not. So you don't know if you'll actually be able to attack it or not. But with the tiles, it's really nice, and they're not super expensive. I know you carry some, I believe,
I do.
but they're really useful, and they're a great way to get started with the tiles. And if you want to get deeper into it, you can 3D print and do stuff like that. But it does help a lot.
Okay. I just want to make sure like it helped with some of the stuff as well.
So the last two things that you can do for your turn is you can ready an action, and that means like let's say your team discussed that this cleric is going to cast a spell on, let's say, the dragon, that's going to like hurt it or like make it immune to something. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to ready your action until after that cleric casts the spell. And let's say you want to draw your sword and attack with that. So you'll ready your action right after the cleric casts the spell, and you'll be able to roll and see if you hit the dragon or not. So readying action is one of the most used ones. And then something that's not used as much, this is more of a oh crap moment, I'm so dead, or I'm about to be hit and it's going to hurt a lot. You can take your dodge action, and that essentially gives your enemy that is trying to attack you disadvantage on attacking you, so that means that they'd have to roll either 2 dice or they'd roll twice and they take the lower number. And it just gives you more of an advantage that you won't get hit. So that's one that's really useful in like a really bad situation when you're really low and you might get knocked. So that would be really helpful. And that kind of concludes what you can do on your turn. So do you have any last questions?
I think you covered it pretty well.
So let's say that you are still in that dungeon and you guys just walk through the corner and you see that big dragon. What are you going to do for your turn?
I take a deep breath, I draw my sword, and I rush at the dragon.
Okay, go ahead and roll. Critical hit or critical miss? Find out next time.